whereas most farms will have feeds that come from off the farm, and probably, especially like concentrated animal farms, will have its manure products that leave the farm in some way. We want to keep that all in the cycle of the farm. So we make sure, and I've actually been downsizing our dairy herd somewhat because the farmer who had it before me at one point really felt that he wanted to, provide more and more milk for people who wanted it. But then there was a lack of balance between what the farm could provide for those animals in terms of feed, and so we now have fewer cows, but the goal is to really be able to feed all those cows by what we produce on our hayfields and pastures there. And all those hayfields and pastures need to really be fed in a good way by the product of those cows and by other leaves that we get from the forest nearby. We put a lot of different things that come from our property there into our compost to make a nice rich compost. But it's important that that all is in the cycle, that we don't bring other... we've had to in our garden, in our CSA garden, because of the intensity of the production there, they've had to at times bring in manure from other farms for the purpose of really growing that intensity of vegetables. But we are trying to work more together now that the garden will, for example, provide a crop of cull carrots for the cattle, and we'll be able to provide them some of our very precious manure, compost, for the garden then. So really to make, the bees are also an organ of the farm. The herbs are used for creating certain preparations that we use in the compost of the dairy on the farm. When people think of biodynamics, the thing that stands out for a lot of people are what are called preparations, biodynamic preparations, and they're numbered 500 to 509. The numbers themselves don't mean anything really, but basically the nature of these preparations are things that Steiner indicated in these agriculture lectures would act as, you could say, homeopathic medicines for the land, because of all the influences that our land has on it from the atmosphere. People are aware of acid rain as an issue, and also electromagnetic radiation that permeates our atmosphere has an influence on the vitality of our animals and plants. All those things one recognizes are really things that have potential to bring illness to our agricultural land. And so Steiner saw that certain medicines, you could say, were really needed to revitalize the land. And so what he suggests are things like putting an herb in a stag bladder, hanging it in the summertime from a tree, so that cosmic influences from the stars can really permeate that in a special way, and then you use that in the compost piles to bring a certain kind of balance to the compost. And there are actually 6 of those types of herbal, animal, specially prepared through the seasons preparations that we use in our compost. And then there's another preparation which is called the cow horn manure preparation, where we use manure from our cows and put it into cow horns in the fall, and then bury those horns in the earth through the winter time, where the crystallization forces and the forces from the stars and planets can in a very particular way enter into that substance. And then that manure gets potentized in the spring or summer, and that's through a whole stirring process that we do to potentize it, and then that gets sprayed in a very dilute way over the land. And that, we have seen, creates the symptom that it's working is that the bacterial life, the soil life, the possibility of the detritus on the soil to break down becomes enhanced. So the cycle works much more vigorously than it would otherwise if we didn't apply that preparation 500. Similar preparation called 501, but this time it's kind of a reverse impulse, which is given to bring in the light forces more strongly and that involves a very finely pulverized quartz that you put into a cow horn, and this time you bury it in the summertime, and then you potentize that again, and you spray that when you want to have a better, a more intense taking in of the sunlight and what it provides. So, for example, especially if you have a problem with molds and mildews in plants, you would use 501 to help to remedy that kind of a problem.
So how do you know when it's time to use a certain application? Or do you always have something readily available, like on, that you're pre-prepared, and then
Right.
you just, when is it,
Every year our herb garden grows the herbs that we need for these preparations, and every year we make them. It's a community festival event. We have a festival called Michaelmas in the fall, which for a lot of these preparations is a good time together to prepare them as part of the festival. And so yeah, we make those preparations every year and then use them as they're needed by the different workshops.
But you have a calendar too, right?
Well, I could say something about that too, yes. There's a special calendar that a woman who's lived at Campbell Village, Kimberton Hills since its founding in 1972. She's lived there, Sherry Wilkweir. She has, at least the last 20 years, I'm not sure how, 20 to 25 years, published a special calendar that's called the Stella Natura calendar. And that's a calendar that really looks in detail at all the cycles of the moon and the planets and the fixed stars, constellations, and again, based partially on the wisdom of what Rudolf Steiner brought, but also other people like Maria Thun have done research on the effects of those rhythms of the planets and of the moon on plant growth and on animal life. And so she, for every day of every month, has indications of where the different phases of the moon are, where the planetary conjunctions are, all the things that have those kinds of influences on our agricultural life are listed, and so you can discern from that calendar when a good time is to plant, when a good time is to harvest for the best keeping quality of the food. Now, I should say though that as a farmer, you first of all have to reckon with the forces of the weather, for example, in terms of doing those things. In spite of what the planting calendar says, if your fields are wet and you're going to cause a lot of compaction by going in there and planting on a planting calendar day, you're not going to do that. It's just the craft of farming has to come first, and then all these things can enhance that if you work with them. Okay. Just briefly, all of you hopefully have experienced milk, and maybe you've all experienced raw milk, and maybe some of you have experienced our raw milk as a biodynamic product. And all I really want to say in terms of, because the title of the talk was something about milk drinking for peace. Sorry if I don't have that exactly down. But the indications that I've read, and again, a couple of books that I want to highlight. There's this one, which is a very recent book by Ron Schmidt called The Untold Story of Milk, and it's a wonderful compilation of kind of the history of milk drinking and milk production from ancient tribal cultures to the present day.